Torture is a hard topic to discuss because, like you had mentioned, this form of violence has always been used ever since the beginning of life's history. And so, hearing from your side of the topic, you seem to favor more in line of it being justifiable, even though you had mentioned some counter arguments and some reasons why it is considered unjustifiable. I'd like to further that even more and support more evidence and rebuttal why it should be considered unjustifiable. You had mentioned that the beginning of torture had brought up into the creation of the government system that we have today. While that is sort of true, yes, the line of what torture can bring has carried over from what we have today, that being for self-pleasure, for intellectual power, through domestic violence, that has carried over. But if it being justifiable, it hasn't. Because, like I had mentioned, in the medieval times, that happened in the 1400s. And that's when people necessarily believed, and when in some cases, yes, they do believe that it was considered okay within society. But as of now, we follow through a documentation from, according to archives.org, in 1749, the Constitution of the United States of America. And written in their preamble, the important summary part of what it's meant to bring, inside of it, there's a part that says to ensure domestic tranquility. And with that, that should just be in line that torture is unjustifiable regardless of what the situation is. It is going against that proclamation, and it pretty much getting rid of the whole point of being equal and giving us the necessary safety that we need to avoid that such domestic abuse. You had also mentioned that it had brought upon the creation of the two parties, that being the Dominican and Republican parties. Well, yes, that is true, but that doesn't really favor in line of it being justifiable, because that's the whole point of those two parties, is to discuss on those contrary conflicts, because that's what the whole two parties are about, is to discuss it in uniformal decision inside the government and law. And right now it's still considered unlawful because considered and mentioned from amnesty.org, um, any unlawful tortured method is not used in Supreme Court or evidence because it is considered derogatory. So it can be used for any sort of beneficial needs, whether it being for evidence or for refutes, and any through even just regular arguments. Form of torture doesn't really bring any beneficial good needs, and therefore this whole point and process of being discussed why torture should be justifiable is useless, because it just favors more in line of it being unjustifiable. And the last thing I'd like to discuss was you mentioning that the higher power, that being the upper government and such, those who are in control of having to use torture won't necessarily interfere with their own individual deeds. And so, yes, that can be true, and it won't invade their personal life, but it will sort of somewhat affect their status, especially their own individual belief and needs, because it's not a guaranteed thing, and they strictly do it for their job, but not for themselves, because they don't feel emotionally invested into treating someone with torture. Because according to humanrightsfirst.org, and from a video, a Frank Anderson, the chief CIA of the South Asia Division, had mentioned that from the deal on, we have lost more rather than what we saved. Our unacceptable policy of torturing has led to a lack of incompetence. And so with this, he feels very inhumane that what he has done for his actions is just for his job and not for the right thing in his own belief. He's just doing it just because of what his job is to do, and he knows that torture is wrong. And many others as well, because there's 4 other people in that video that mention from other different higher ups that they also believe torture is not a great tactic to use. And there's many other form of tactics like manipulation and stuff that can bring someone up for the information that they might need. And like I said, yes, it can bring some possibilities uh, to further know what other possible outcomes may occur. It's not a guaranteed. And they can't use that for evidence because, like I had mentioned, it's considered unlawful, any sort of torture tactic. And so with these reasons, this is why I firmly believe torture is unjustifiable regardless of what the situation is. Thank you.